So this is the continuation video of how to change mileage on Volkswagen Mark3 gauge clusters. This is covering the VDO. In my last video, I just did motometer, and I said I couldn't do VDO with the Microsoft DOS program, which you can't. The program is broken. But there is another way you can change the mileage if you really want to, and that is take the chip out of the board, which I have right there. And this is just the circuit board from a VDO cluster. It's missing its gauges. This one's blown up, so I'm just using it for parts. But the chip lives right there next to that capacitor. And it's the 93 C46 chip. And so what you have to do is you have to unsolder it and then take it and put it in, I guess, a breadboard here and interface with it. And you connect through the serial data port in the computer. And then you use an EEPROM programmer like ponyprog or any other ones online. And you don't have to use Windows 98 to do all this. You can use like the newest version of Windows or whatever version of Windows you have. I'm just using Windows 98 because I like using old stuff. I just find it kind of fun. And so if you unsolder the chip, interface with it, you have to wire it all together and then get it to work in the programmer, which I'll show you how to do that in the next step of the video. Okay, so we're back. I have the chip installed into this breadboard here. As you can see, so the quality is not that good. And so what you have to do is, like I said, connect to the serial data port of the computer. And then you have to go through resistors and diodes. The resistors you need are 4.7 kilo ohm resistors and 5 volt Zener diodes. I'll show a diagram of how to do this in a second here. And then once you connect the diodes and the resistors and connect to the chip, and then you power the chip. I'm powering the chip through this other, I guess, it is an EEPROM programmer, but I'm not using it for its intended purpose. I'm really just using it for the 3.3 volt power supply, which from what I read online, you can use 5 volt or 3.3. I'm just using 3.3 because it works. I don't know if you can use 5 volts or not, but so I'm using the power from that and then connecting it all to the chip. And once you're connected to the chip, you can come here into your programmer. I'm using ponyprog. I recommend ponyprog. It's really simple to use. And you just want to make sure that everything works. So you have to go to options, setup, and then shows you what you're using. So I'm using serial data. That's just, I really honestly don't know what that is. That means, and this is the port we're using, serial data port, because you guys have up to 4 serial data ports in your computer. I only have 2, but I only have 1 turned on. So column 1, and then this is the control lines. I never played with any of that. And then once you have it connected and you think it's all work, you hit probe just to make sure it is okay. And you see test okay, which means everything's okay. And then you hit, okay, I want to read the data, read the device. So you hit read device, loads for a second, and here we go. This is the data that is on that chip. And the mileage for VDO clusters that aren't the bubble face ones, just I guess I'll show you an example, like just the one that looks like this. I think these are like OBD2, I think it's probably like 96 to 2002, I think they made these ones till. They have their mileage stored in the last 2 lines on the chip here. And mine is showing all Fs because I've already reset this chip to 1 kilometer, or I guess actually 0. Yeah, turn it on. I'll show you this one. I've done the exact same thing in this one. I'll show you guys this one later on in the video, how it's 0 kilometers. And to figure out what to actually change the hex code to, I went online and I found this really useful calculator made by these guys, which I recommend if you use it, you should donate to them, because without this would be a pain to figure out how to what to actually write in there. And you can see they have bubble cluster and normal cluster, which is the normal cluster, which is the one that I have. And you enter your desired mileage. So say we want like 100. So we write 100 and you hit enter. And then, oh no, I'm grabbing that mouse over there. And then we scroll down and it'll show us what we have to enter in. So to show 100 is we'd have to change the hex code, like this right here, these lines, to what it says here. And to do that, in ponyprog, you hit edit buffer enable, and then you can click here and you can edit. You just write whatever you want in there. Make sure it's capital. Write the correct number that you want in there. Oh, caps lock's not on. Okay, there we go. And then I didn't play with decimal or character. I don't know really what any of that means. I guess decimals, we could probably really get into how hex works, but I'm not good at explaining it. And so once you have all that edited, you might want to save it, or I honestly recommend before you even touch your chip, you save a copy of the data from it, just in case something does go wrong. You can always just re-download or rewrite what originally was on the chip. So then you want to save it, and then you'd hit write to the device, and it's gonna say, are you sure you want to write the device? And you hit yes, and then it just writes the device, and write successful. And then what I do to make sure it actually is on there is, I don't know of another way, just clearing this. I'm really not familiar with ponyprog, because I just exit out. And no, we're just not gonna save anything. And I just reopen the program, and I just hit read the device, and there we go. It's on there again. So that's what we wrote to it. And then what you have to do is just unclip the chip from there and resolder it into the board, the spot that it goes on, and then power up your cluster, and hopefully it all works and you have no mileage or whatever mileage you want. And I'll show you guys the diagram of how to connect your serial data port to the computer. I just made a quick diagram myself showing anode and cathode, because you need the 5-volt Zener diodes and you want the polarity right on them. And so this is the computer, the serial data port has 9 pins. 1, 2, and 9 you do nothing with. 3 you have to connect to a 4.7 kilo ohm resistor to a 5-volt diode, and then the pin 1 of the chip. And I have a pinout of the chip right here showing all the pins on the chip. But I'll just show you guys the diagram here, just make it simpler. So then pin 4, you do the same. Pin 5 is a ground, so you just connect to the ground side of your breadboard. And then pin 6 connects to pin 7 on the serial data port. So you just basically jumper pin 6 to pin 7 on the port, and then pin 7 goes to a diode and a resistor, and then pin 8 goes directly to pin 4 of the chip. And so this is what the diagram should look like. So you guys get a good view of that. And then you just need 5-volt power or 3.3. If you're gonna use 5 volts, I suggest buying this EEPROM program. Go to Amazon, just look up EEPROM programmer. It should look something like this. And for watching videos I watched online, is you can use 5 volts because it doesn't output much current, and you can't really fry anything with no current. So you should be fine using 5 volts, but I recommend using 3.3 volts. Just to be sure, because I'm not sure what the chip is actually looking for. And then 7 and 6 on the chip aren't actually used. So after you do all that, basically after you build this, you can put the chip in there and you can start editing the coding of the chip. And I'll make another part to this video showing what the chip looks like inside the board and the modification you can do it inside this gauge cluster to make removing the chip a hell of a lot easier. So this is what the gauge cluster looks like with the front part taken off of it. And so I'll show you guys in the blown up cluster here. So you have to unsolder the motor. That's the 2 spots for it, but I only unsolder the TAC one. And what I do to do that, because these clusters are like all basically one piece, the faces and everything come off in one piece. What I did to make my life easier is I put a slice in the middle here, because it just joins the 2 faces together. There is nothing electronic going through there or anything, as you can see. I just slice it right there, and then you can just unsolder the one motor for the tach here, and this just pops out of the gauge cluster, and then your chip lives underneath. That's why you have to take it out, because your chip is underneath where you have to unsolder. It's right there. Can't really see that well. I wish I had a light, but I don't. That's where you have to unsolder, and you can't really access that with the gauge being in your way. So just because it's easier just to slice that, unsolder one. And I don't pull, what you could actually do is pull the needles off, but I don't like pulling the needles off, because my experience of pulling the needles off, unless you mark it and you're really good at lining it back up, you'll never get the needle put back on to the right spot. So I just unsolder the motor, so I don't have to worry about that. Once the motor's unsoldered, it's just 4 solder joints and they're really easy to unsolder. I just do that, so you don't have to worry about, oh, my needle's not in the right spot now, or something else goes wrong. That's basically all there is to it. It's really easy. Well, really easy once you figure this out and figure that out, but hopefully with the diagrams and what I've showed you here, if you wanted to do this, you could do it. It's DIY friendly, you can do it yourself, because I know online they charge, you know, a fair bit to do this, and if you are ambitious and you just don't have the money to pay for someone to do this for you, then I recommend giving it a try. But I recommend maybe buying a separate gauge cluster and testing if you can do this first before taking your gauge cluster apart and maybe breaking your gauge cluster or blowing it up like this one blew up. And if you guys like the video, please share it, and maybe I'll make a different video later on on TRW clusters if I get one. I do have another motometer cluster coming in that is broken, and maybe I'll make a video on that showing what's broken on it and what I did to fix it. But thanks for watching. I realized I forgot to show what your mileage will be at the end if you do all this, and this is what it will look like. Thanks for watching.